This just goes to show you never know what you're going to see in Florida, so I had to catch it on video. It's a Jesus lizard running on its back two legs away from me in my parents' front yard, right here in Florida. I never thought I would see one of these in Florida. The Amazon rainforest maybe, but not Florida. He's like, oh yeah. I thought I would combine two things that I like to do. Talk about science and make a video where you could earn a game for your Switch, your PlayStation, or Xbox. But before we can do it, you have to please like and subscribe to my channel so that I can get up to 1,000 subscribers. So let's talk about how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna talk about the food chain in this video. You take some notes and you share them with your parents and you earn a video game at the end. So here we have here is a regular old food chain. The sun is giving energy to the plants, and the plants then are eaten by the mice, and then the mouse is eaten by the snake, and the snake is eaten by the eagle. It's important to note which direction the arrows are flowing. They're showing the flow of energy, and it's also important to note that they only get 10% of the energy of the animal that they've eaten. 90% of the energy is lost as body heat. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about this energy pyramid. And the energy pyramid shows that loss of 10% energy as you move up the pyramid. What do you think that bird was that just flew away? Where do you think it fits into the energy pyramid? Where does this bunny rabbit fit into the energy pyramid? Let's look at it again. So at the very bottom you have producers. That might be something like the grass or the wheat in my other video. Then the primary consumer gets 10% of the energy. That would have been the mouse. And then if something ate the mouse, like the snake, that's a secondary consumer, and the eagle is the tertiary or the apex predator in this situation. So what about this flower? Where do you think it fits into that energy pyramid? Go ahead, say it out loud. Yep, it's a producer. So the producers get the sunlight, get their energy from the sunlight and do photosynthesis. So they're at the very bottom of this pyramid. But what about the grasshopper? Where would that one fit in? Where would it fit in? So the grasshopper, it's not a producer, but it's a primary consumer. Watch me scare it away. It goes so fast I can't even capture it. Bloop, gone. So now there's something a little bit different that I want to talk about. It's usually left out. I found this poor little gopher tortoise. He's no longer with us. But what's happening to him right now? Where does he fit into this pyramid? Well, there's bacteria that are breaking down all of the leftovers of that gopher tortoise, so they're part of the decomposers. So I found this hole, and usually there's coyotes over here digging. And what did the coyote leave behind? Some scat or poop. And so what's breaking that down? Decomposers. And what about these wasps? Where do you think they would fit? Well, the wasps eat other insects, so they're probably a secondary consumer. All right, so this sandhill crane, what do you think that this one is? We saw him flying away earlier. Where does he fit in? Well, he probably eats fish in the pond. Depending on what the fish ate in the pond, he's either a secondary, tertiary, or apex predator in that situation. But an eagle will probably eat a sandhill crane. So the eagle is probably the final apex predator, and the sandhill crane is probably the tertiary. What about this little nest with birds in it? They're so helpless, these little birds. You know, mama goes and gets those grasshoppers. If the grasshopper is the primary consumer and the bird is the secondary consumer. So these little guys, these helpless little guys, secondary consumers. What about these guys? My roof was covered with these vultures. Where are they found? Well, they're scavengers. They're kind of in the role of decomposers. Now what about these slow-moving guys? They love this fresh water. That's a Florida manatee, and they just eat grasses on the bottom of the ocean. So what are they? They would be primary consumers. They're eating the photosynthetic grasses that are on the bottom of this river or the bottom of the brackish ocean water or in the ocean. So now what about this frog right here? Where do you think he fits on that food pyramid? Well, he eats flies, and the flies probably ate some other flies maybe, or they ate some grasses. What about this coyote? Where do you think that coyote fits in? He's pretty close to an apex predator. You have to be real careful with coyotes because they will eat your cats and dogs, so watch out. Now those ducks, most likely secondary consumers, but what about this alligator here? He's got that big old fish in his mouth, and the fish is probably secondary. It probably ate other little fish, and that alligator ate that fish. That's definitely an apex predator right there. But I'm not talking about that virtual tiger. I'm talking about the human, probably the most dangerous animal out there, because we're not afraid to barbecue up some alligator. So on my property, probably this little girl right here, that's Ginger. She's probably one of the apex predators along with me. We're right there at the top. But we do have some eagles flying around, and check this guy out. He's carrying a stick to go build his nest. All right. So when you talk about food chain, you have to talk about food webs. It's basically putting a whole bunch of food chains together. It still starts with the sun, and we're going to follow the sun giving the light to that aquatic plant right there. That's the primary producer. And then these little aquatic insects or these aquatic herbivores, they eat the plant, and so they're the primary consumer. And then the fish eats them. That's a secondary consumer. And another fish eats those fish, and that's the tertiary. And the top level predator is that eagle that eats that big, huge fish. So again, a food web is when you put together a whole bunch of food chains. It's really important. The arrows are all showing the movement of energy. Now, when you talk about food chains and food webs, it's always good to talk about the biomass pyramid. So if you look down here at the grasses, you look at how many kilograms of grasses there are to sustain the grasshoppers. And as you look at the numbers, they're divided by 10. It's because 10% of the energy is only able to be transferred between each of the trophic levels. So if you look at the phytoplankton right here, that's the main producer that does photosynthesis, and then the zooplankton only gets 10% of the energy, and the herring only gets 10% of the energy. So you have to go down less and less. A keystone species, something a little bit different. A wolf is a keystone species in the national parks, and I'll put an article down in the description that you can read about what keystone species are. Basically, a keystone species is an organism in the food web that all the other organisms are tied to. So the wolves actually hunt the deer. So if you take them out of the national park, the deer take over and they eat all the plants, ruining the food web. Go check out that link in the description. It talks about how wolves even help shape the rivers in the national forests. Check it out. Now you've come to the end of the video. Please hit like and subscribe and show your special notes to your parents that you've learned about food chains, food webs, bioenergy mass, the different trophic levels, about keystone species. Go out for a walkabout with your parents and earn that game that you've deserved. Leave a note down in the comments as to which animal was your favorite. Again, please subscribe to the channel, and here's a little bit of some bonus video for you on Florida animals. Now, foxes are naturally found in Florida. I've seen them a few times in my backyard. I just didn't catch any on video. This is one that I saw in a sanctuary, so I thought that I'd put it in here. There are not really any wolves left in Florida. They've mostly been hunted out or killed, and you can read about them in that article that I posted down in the link in the description. I am looking for subscribers, and probably one of the key apex predators besides humans might be this Florida panther right here. But again, you don't see them. They're very rare. And this one I saw again in that same sanctuary, and I thought that I'd put it in the video for you. And also, it is possible to find this apex predator in Florida. This is a bear, but this is not a bear in Florida. This is Arizona at a sanctuary called Bearizona. It's a little outdoor zoo. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and keep science awesome.